Welcome to this week's Workplace series. Now picture this. A bright red furry little monster logs onto what was then Twitter and types, "Elmo is just checking in. How is everybody doing?" What happened then was millions of people replying. Some were saying that they were fine, but many were saying that they're exhausted, anxious, struggling, broke, or just not okay. It was the full spectrum of human emotions in that comment thread. And in classic Elmo style, he responded, "Wow, Elmo is glad he asked. Elmo learned that it is important to ask a friend how they're doing. Elmo will check in again soon, friends. Elmo loves you." Now, it was really adorable, but it was also really simple. And there's a leadership lesson in all this, because we can't leave the work of checking in on people's emotions to the world of a Sesame Street character. That's our job as a leader. There's a hidden cost when people just say, "I'm fine." Think about it. During the working day, you, your team members, your colleagues, you're constantly regulating your emotions. You're staying calm in that meeting. You're staying professional with that difficult client. You're staying composed when you're actually really frustrated with one of your colleagues. Now, that emotional regulation, it's not a bad thing. It's part of being an adult in a complex, changing world. But the problem starts when that regulation quietly turns into suppression. You never say how you really feel. You never feel that there's a safe outlet to talk about your fears, your feelings. You slap "I'm fine" on like a mask day after day. And that's where emotional dissonance comes in. Sociologist Ali Hochschild came up with that idea. And emotional dissonance is the gap between what you genuinely feel, so what you're feeling on the inside, and what you feel like you're required to show on the outside. So think about it. Here are a few kind of real world examples. You might be dealing with a difficult customer. They're rude, unfair, unprofessional, and even really personal. But of course, your training, your company policies say that you must remain polite and professional. Or it might be that you're talking to a stressed colleague. They're snappy, they're unreasonable, they're rude. And you know that if you show your frustration, that's just going to escalate the situation. So you hold back. Now, in both cases, you're actually doing something constructive. You're choosing a response that is going to help rather than escalate the situation. But your emotions, how you're feeling on the inside, they're not going to just magically disappear. They're going to go somewhere. And if there's never a place to process how you're feeling, what's happening, that somewhere, that becomes inside you, that sits inside. It turns up as tension, fatigue, resentment, numbness. That's emotional dissonance. And it's also related to another idea from social psychologist Leon Fessinger, which is cognitive dissonance. And that's the discomfort that we feel when our beliefs and values clash against our actions. Now, the key difference is that cognitive dissonance is a tension between what you believe and what you actually then do. Emotional dissonance is the tension between what you feel on the inside and what you're showing on the outside. Both create stress. Both, unmanaged, come with a cost. So why does this matter for leaders? You might be thinking, yeah, sure, but isn't that just part of work? Aren't we all going to have to just deal with emotions? And yeah, sure, to a point. But the research is clear that when emotional dissonance is constant and unrelieved, it starts to bite. Studies with frontline workers, health workers, social workers show that ongoing emotional dissonance is linked to higher exhaustion, more mental distress, more sickness, more absence, and less empathy and healthy behavior. So when people constantly have to fake what they feel, they burn out faster and they care less. Now, that's bad for them. It's also bad for your culture, bad for your team environment, and bad for performance. So as a leader, dealing with this isn't about the soft stuff. This is about the emotional infrastructure of your team. So let's work through some practical ways, some things that you can do to reduce that emotional strain. Firstly, normalize real conversations. You want to create an environment where it's okay to be human. Now, that doesn't mean that every meeting turns into group therapy, but it means that there's space for fears, for feelings, for honesty. So you can start your team meeting with that quick emotional check-in. What's one word for how you're feeling right now? Also, look at how you use your one-on-ones to genuinely check in. How are you going? Really? And then pause long enough to hear the answer. And when someone shares with you, resist the urge to jump straight into fix-it mode. Thank them for sharing. Ask them what would be the most helpful thing that you can do for them right now. Now, what you're doing through this is creating psychological safety, and it's built in those small moments where people feel heard, not judged or managed. Next, grow your emotional intelligence. Now, your emotional intelligence, your ability to notice, understand, and manage your own emotions, that is so critical, because when your EQ is high, you're more likely to notice when someone else around you is going quieter. You're going to create the space to hear. You're going to notice the impact that you have on others. You're going to pick up on tension that isn't being named. Those little shifts are often signals of emotional dissonance. And rather than ignoring them, get curious. You might say to your team member, I've noticed that you're just sitting a little bit quieter in the last couple of meetings. How are you traveling? Or you could start the conversation with going, that last client meeting that we had, it looked pretty intense. How are you feeling about how it went? This is not about prying. What you're doing is signaling, I see you, I care. This is the space to be honest, to really share about how you're feeling. And when you show that genuine interest, you'll find that people are just way more likely to open up to you. Number 3, protect that recovery zone. This is about balance, because emotional dissonance is far more draining when there's no recovery time. If your team is always on, those late nights, constant firefighting, endless back-to-back meetings, then even minor emotional dissonance just piles up. So as a leader, watch out for workloads. Be realistic about what's achievable and those priorities. Model the boundaries. Don't send non-urgent emails late at night and call it flexible working. Encourage breaks, holidays, genuine time off, not performative leave where people are actually still online. An emotional healthy team isn't a team that doesn't have problems. It's a team that has the energy, the honesty, the trust, and that safe environment to be able to share and work through challenges together. So let's circle back to our little furry friend Elmo, because he did something very simple and yet so powerful. He asked, how are you doing? Then he listened. Then he came back and said, I'm glad I asked. I'll check in again soon. That's not childish. That's leadership. Your role isn't to fix everyone's feelings. Your role is to create the conditions where people don't have to fake how they feel all the time. So this week, try check in just with one person. Stay curious just a little bit longer than it feels comfortable. In your next team meeting, make 3 to 5 minutes for people to share one word or a sentence about how they're really traveling right now. And importantly, notice your own emotional dissonance. Where are you saying, I'm fine, when you're anything but? Because when you make that space for real emotions, your team isn't just going to feel better, they're going to work better together. Take care. I'll see you next week.